Okay, so, well, as I said in the note that I put in the beginning of the video, I'm not a professional in this subject, and I'm not gonna try to pretend that I am, but I am extremely fascinated by this subject. It's one of my favorite subjects ever, even though I know very little of it. I was actually working on another video, but I saw that the letter of Christian came out, and I hadn't made a Christian video in like over a year, so I couldn't help it. So sorry, I couldn't help it. What I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna try to use this as a template to see if the format that I use here can help me learn how to do videos in the future about these things. I'm gonna use it as a test. So I'm excited. Let me see. First of all, I know that I'm gonna learn so much from this because the things that I'm seeing here are very difficult. It's like I'm gonna say the obvious here because everybody that knows Christian knows that he's all over the place. He's very unstable. He doesn't have very defined personality, basically. You can see it. That's why I like this subject, because it's things that you know, that anybody knows, but still you can sort of reaffirm things. You can accentuate things by looking at, for example, body language, looking at handwriting, looking at the way people draw things, the colors they use, the way people dress, everything. I love behavior. I think behavior is the thing that I am actually more interested in above anything else, above art, above archaeology, everything that I wanted to, all of my passions in life. I think they all sum up to behavior. I wanted to be an archaeologist because I wanted to learn how people were before. And I like art because I like seeing how people are, basically, how I am, and how that relates to everything else. So basically, I'm gonna start. Uh, Besides the fucking ludicrous shit that he says in his in the letter, which is like is another thing. I already read it. And okay, so besides the craziness, you can see that Chris is very unstable based on the fact that his writing goes up and down. That is a very defined characteristic of people who are unstable. He also has the type of handwriting that you would expect in emotional people, like no shit, he's Christian. Everybody knows that, but you can see it there. His writing is very sort of cursive in a way. It has a lot of, it's not angular, it's more rounded. From people who are more into the emotional side of their personality. And he is very volatile, he's fickle, and he also has a lot of ambition. Like he dreams a lot. Obviously, he's Christian again. Everybody knows that, but you can see it here, and I'm gonna explain it soon. How you can see that in his writing. He is somebody with high expectations. He is also crazy enough. We all know his. I mean, we all know he's dumb. Even if he didn't have his condition, he's autistic. Being autistic doesn't mean that you have to be dumb. That's a misconception. But what I'm going to with this is that you can see a characteristic of handwriting that intellectual people have. I can translate that to Chris by him being somebody who drives himself by his own logic. In his mind, he thinks he's very smart. For example, the L's in all of his writings are very tall. When you see things like that in writing, that's things that L's, for example, the V, the J in Jesus. He thinks very highly of himself. When people do that, it's because they have very high thoughts. He also has a lot of repressed energy. You can see depression in his writing, of course. Again, no shit, Sherlock. And let me see, a lot of ego. Somebody who has remarkable hopes for the future, but still also dwells a lot in the past. Again, no shit, Sherlock. But I'm gonna explain that in a minute. One last thing that I want to point out, like in broad, before I go into detail, is that he is very decisive in whatever comes to his mind. You can see it here. You can notice on how stubborn he is in real life. That stubbornness and hard head that he has always had over all these years, you can see it represented in his handwriting here, in the little line that you put in the T. It's very pronounced, and it goes all the way. It's very also you can well, you can see that he's distant from people, and you can also see that he's artistic. Again, everybody knows that he has the handwriting of like artistic people. But in some cases, you can see that he is distant from people, but in some cases, you can see that he doesn't recognize, he doesn't make up, it can't make up who he is or how to act. And you can see it in his handwriting. For example, whenever you see somebody who makes a lot who separates words a lot when they write, that means that they're very distant from people. They don't have they don't have a lot of social skills or anything like that, which can describe Christian a lot. But for example, Christian has that a lot, but in some cases there's barely any distance at all. So that can tell you right there that he is socially very distant from people, but sometimes he gets way too invasive. That's all I can see broadly. So I'm gonna go into details now. Okay, let's get into the details now. As I said previously, I pointed out that you can see how unstable he is by his writing. And what I meant by that is that, for example, you can see how inconsistent his stability by writing, for example, in making spaces, going up and down all the time, changing the sizes of the letters, stuff like that. Here, you see what I mean. For example, let's start by the beginning of the letter. Let's start with the I have finally. You can see that this is something that repeats itself a lot. This pattern of first thing, you can see the I here has these little lines here. How you call those? Those little rooftop things, like a column. You see, that's what happens when you get a professional graphology expert to analyze Gandhi, John Lennon, Winston Churchill, and politicians and whatnot, and then you get the bootleg graphology aficionado. Who you gonna analyze? You get Christian, my friend. First of all, his eye is kind of like bigger, a little bit bigger, not that much, not as much as I was kind of expecting, but he makes other uppercase letters. For example, there's an E a little bit below, says everyone, and the E is like super big. For example, that's very interesting. The E in everyone is uppercase, and it's very tall, and the I, it's also uppercase, and it's not as tall. You can actually see that he sees other people. I'm gonna use an example so you can visualize this. Imagine the word is you, and the letters in that word is people and other things in your life. So the way you write, the whole letter represents you, especially the first letter, and the rest is the components of it is the people and the things around you. So the way you write it is how you see yourself, is the internalized version, and the little components is the people. So that's how you treat others, or you treat things. That's how you handle things. So for example, the I is a word, and it represents himself, and he is not as big as everyone. For example, you see another example there. Firstly, and the F at the beginning is uppercase, and it's really taller. Vitally, again, you see it several times. You see it in any again, but he goes sort of up and down whenever he writes the I, he has a notion of himself as being actually smaller, which contradicts other aspects of his writing that show him as thinking very highly of himself. So you could translate the lower uppercase letters being sort of not that tall, as he feels sort of vulnerable. Maybe he feels probably like, well, not probably, everybody knows this. I'm just saying surface. I want to discover more obscure details about him. I want to see if I can, actually, because I'm not sure if I can. But I want to see if I can discover something that hasn't been said before, hasn't been like pointed out before. But okay, I'm gonna move on. For example, right here, I also, and the I right here is really tall, but he's talking about I also swear direct threat. What the fuck is that? What the fuck is that word? Truth. Oh yeah, swear direct. He's swearing truth. He's like being, I'm honest. I am being truthful, which I don't believe it because of the way he wrote truth, but he's trying to pretend, and he writes himself the I. He writes it really tall, and in other cases he writes it sort of when he's being more honest, he writes it shorter. Anyways, so you see I have, and the I have is ascending. Also, the I is ascending. Whenever you write ascending things, means high goals in life, high expectations, ambitions, stuff like that. High energy, high just like security. So I have, and he's sort of ascending. He's feeling sort of sure about himself, finally, but then he writes finally, and finally is starts higher and then it goes down. Down indicates whenever you write something in decaying like that, something going down, that indicates exhaustion, depression, sadness, stuff like that. I'm interested in the way he writes the lowercase i's. I never figured he would do some. I was expecting. I have seen his, how do you call it, the, oh my god, I lost my train of thought. His attraction sign. I should analyze it, but I don't remember the eyes in there. I haven't paid that much attention to it. But he doesn't draw the little point, the little dot on top of the eye as like a ball, which I would have imagined that the ball point, a dot on top of the eye usually indicates that people are a little bit more childish, maybe a little bit more immature. It's not always the same. It's not always just one meaning. You have to see the whole thing. You have to read the whole thing. You have to put things together in order to come to real conclusions. But the little ball on top of the eye is usually put by people with a lot of imagination, creativity, sort of childish, a little bit immature. But he doesn't do it like that. And his eye, the eye, he usually just uses 2 points, which is, that escapes me. I really don't know what that means. I should study these things more. Probably means that he feels very, I don't know, just sad, low on self-esteem, something like that. The super tiny eye that is usually just almost just a little point. the little line thing that crosses the F goes all the way from one side to the other. People who are very decisive do it like that. People who have security do it like that. So whenever he thinks about something, he usually feels like, he means it. So he uses a lot of hooks in his writing. No, I'm not exactly sure everything. I'm not exactly sure about everything of what that means. I should study these things more. I'm gonna do it now, since I'm gonna use these videos as an excuse. I know more about body language than handwriting. But for example, whenever people use hooks, for example, the one that you see in the F for fresh right here, he doesn't. He's all over the place. It's difficult to read. Sometimes you can see that he dwells like on the past, but then in some of the letters he doesn't. I'm missing so many details that I know are there, and I kind of have them in the tip of my tongue, but I can't really describe them because I have very limited knowledge about these things. But you can say that he's somebody who's always thinking. The little bubble shape of the whenever you do these arcs, for example, in the P of paper, in the E, these little bubble things are usually written by people who take a lot of time to think. Chris doesn't take a lot of time to think about what he's gonna do, but he's always trapped in his imagination. So maybe that's where that stems from. But notice how he felt when he received the paper. He was kind of hopeful and happy. He felt good about it, and then he went back down. You see, I have finally, and it's going up, and then finally, and it goes down, and then it stays like that. Received, and it's sort of the pattern again, but not as prevalent. And then the rest of the sentence is more stable. Notice how he uses spaces fairly well in letters. Whenever you write something, the space between letters usually should be the length of your lowercase m. So he kind of uses that correctly, and then he goes from that to being like super invasive. The I feel it's pretty much a single word. It's all mixed together. And then, curiously, advised, he took a lot of space there. He leaves a lot of space there. It's very noticeable that that's not normal. You're usually more inclined to one margin or the other. More stable people or are more balanced in both margins of the blank sheet whenever they're gonna write something. And for example, Chris is very conflicted. He leaves blank spaces in one line, and then in the other one he leaves a lot of space on the right side. This is the right side, right? Because I can't tell. No, what I call right is left in this part of the video and the other way around. And what happens is that I actually can't distinguish, I legitimately can't distinguish left and right due to I probably must have some kind of undiagnosed dyslexia that I've never checked with a doctor or anything. That's probably why I can't talk in a very evenly manner, and that's why I stutter, and that's why I can't tell left from right, and that's why most of my issues happen. so anyways, I was going to edit this part, but while I was doing it, I realized it was going to be even more of a mess, so I'm just gonna leave this little note here, and there's that. Bye. Left from right. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Okay. Usually, he probably feels conflicted with his mother's side, like people who are more immature and people who have sort of more mommy issues. Basically, leave the right side of the sheet more blank, and you see that he does that several times. And then in other cases, he does the opposite. The right side is the interiorized version aspect of yourself. The left side is the more outgoing one, the more ambitious one, the one that plans the future. Even though he wrote a comma there, the next letter is uppercase all emphasizing on everybody. He writes it with the fucking uppercase, and it's again ascending. Let's see. As you may or will. Again, he was writing very stable, and then may or will. He probably feels he has feelings here about expressing this. As you may or will. He's insecure about it. The little ball in the A is a little bit more squished. He doesn't feel very good about it. Notice how he sort of doubted writing may is descending and will is ascending. So he's feeling he actually wrote the words as he felt them. May, and he was insecure, and then or will, and he's more hopeful about it. You have my consent to relay all of the contents. Look at the ends. Look at the ends on contents. There's a, how do you call that? I don't fucking remember. I've heard about that in places, but I can't fucking remember. But he's very conflicted at writing. Basically, the way he wrote the ends right there in content is very conflicted. Let's see how he writes them in other words. Sometimes he does it like that. It's barely an N. It's just like a swirl thing. And in other words, it's more defined. It's conflicted. I don't remember. It's gonna bug me. Fuck. Okay. Contents off. He's a physical document to. By the way, I almost missed that little detail. When he writes Joshua, he has negative feelings about him. Quick note: when I first read the H in Joshua, I thought it had the ink pasting of repressed energy and aggression, but looking at it closer, you can notice that it's actually a correction. A very interesting correction, because he transformed a U into an H in a way that it looks that you can't really notice it at first. It's very noticeable, but he did it very opportunistically. If you don't know him, you can tell right there that he has a habit of disguising his mistakes very cleverly. It's not as clever, but it's opportunistic when it comes to correcting something. He is conflicted anyways when he writes Joshua Moon. And that little B in the middle, I don't know what that is. He sort of corrected himself. He didn't know. He was very conflicted when he wrote Joshua Moon Newell. And he put the little like name on top. Again, David Heilenberg, and he again, you see the paste there on the V. And what else? There's something else about it. I don't know what it is. Shit. That's what happens. That's what happens when you're such a fucking noob. Let's see. I want to find something interesting that... all of this is interesting, but all of this is interesting shit that we already know. Everyone should hear and appreciate sincerely. I've already talked about the instability of his writing going up and down. Sincerely and authentic. Sincerely and authentic. And you can see that he struggled when he wrote authentic. He put another paste. The N is corrected. He wasn't secure when he wrote that. When he wrote authentic, which is kind of an irony. And he felt aggression. Now, why did he felt like angry when he wrote authentic? Maybe because he feels that people are not going to believe him. He wasn't sure, so he had to correct the N. And he put a lot of paste of like ink pasting there. And spiritually written very unstably. You can see goes up and then down and then up again. There is sadness and hope and like high spirits in that work. And because you can see the rest, the next writing there is very stable, very in line. I also swear direct truth. When he wrote I also, he meant it. His I was very tall. He fucking meant that. Swear direct truth. And again, very ironic truth. He struggled. You can make the case that he's writing there in that part sort of very ugly because he's on the edge of the sheet, which you could make that case, but still it's very peculiar. The truth word is almost undistinguishable. I had struggled to read it, to be honest. Almost as you don't mean it, Chris. Huh. What do you know? Almost as if you're not that truthful about it, even though you're trying to, because the T indicates, it's very tall. It has those hooks that point downwards. People who cling to the past use those hooks. You're trying to make it look authentic, but it's not coming out that way. You write those uppercase letters very tall when you want to be noticed and when you feel very proud. When you're a proud motherfucker. When you're very secure. With all my left hand over my heart as I write this. With all my left hand over my heart as I write this, and notice how as I write it, the I is more in tone with the size of the other words. He doesn't feel as secure as when he said, "I also swear to write this sentence and then fucking this sentence," and he wasn't very sure when he wrote that. Firstly and vitally, there's things there that I can't really dissect. Sadly, you have to be honest. You have to be humble. Okay, first of all, you have to be humble. There's limits to what you know, and I don't know too much. Another thing, if I'm gonna point out things and I'm gonna criticize or whatever, you have to put yourself in the line a little bit. I put my own handwriting and the sheet and everything in the beginning of the video, so that anybody who knows about the subject can actually see my own handwriting and judge it. I have this arrogance too. In my signature, I put like the T with really fucking tall and noticeable there, and it's in my signature. I noticed that is in my signature, but I don't write it like that when I handwrite normally. In my signature is sort of my artist name, you want to call it like that. And of course I'm very secure about my work, and I have things that you might notice. Maybe I don't even notice it, but maybe you could if you know about these things. So I put it there so that you can judge me too, because you have to be fair if you're gonna point out things about other people. Anyways, firstly and vitally, I should be made obvious and clear. The dot thing on top of the I here is more rounded, more imaginative. Should be made obvious and clear that aside from Andy Warhol, goddamn Chris, you see aggression again. Very, very curious. You see what I mean? It should be, and you can see that he wrote, it should be made like more kind of violently and obvious. He pasted the ink a lot there. Aggression is like saying, listen to me. Like fucking, it's obvious, and he's trying to emphasize that he's being aggressive about it. And clear, again, sort of hopeful and then kind of sad. And clear, like he feels frustrated basically. Aside from Andy Warhol, notice how there's no aggression when he writes Andy Warhol, and there was aggression when he wrote the other names, because of course he feels his ego. Andy Warhol is his ego. The O's that he writes are very somebody who's kind of secure about himself and has ego. Chris has a lot of fucking ego, and he's more cunning, and he's a little bit smarter than what people make him to be. You can see it in his handwriting. He knows he's not as clueless. Yeah, the motherfucker is not as clueless. Anyways, my life events and present had so far can directly be compared and matched. No, you don't really mean that, Chris. You're not sure about it, aren't you? You can see it there. So far is again up and down. He's going high and low. Ken, you see how when he wrote Ken, he's very hopeful, but deep inside he knows it can't. So the C starts very big and then the word ends very small. He doesn't really mean it directly be compared and again unstable, matched with that which have been again is not secure about what is writing the chronicle. Ooh, is that spirals? Almost like he's lying. People who use spirals a lot. Is that what it means? In here in this case, because people who use spirals a lot in their writing are usually kind of lying. Chronicled, but he pasted there a lot. So that's something to that of Jesus Christ. Again, no aggression when he wrote Jesus Christ, but there is hope and sadness, uplift and then down. He's very conflicted about thinking that way. Of Nazareth, aggression in the E, and he struggled a lot to write that. He feels guilty. You see how he's like his hand shakes when he wrote that of Nazareth. He felt aggression, felt insecurity. He felt. So quick note, just thought of something. When I said that Christian was insecure about writing Jesus Christ in Nazareth, and because his handwriting was shaky, something came to my mind. What if he's also very exhilarated? So this is something that he just came up with, probably in prison. It's a very new idea to him, so he's not used to it, and he knows it's a taboo idea. He knows he's going too far. So what if he's insecure, but it's also something that causes him a lot of adrenaline, and that's why his hand shakes and he writes very rushed when he writes those specific words. He's very aware. He knows he's going too far. He's very aware of what he's doing, of his life and things that are going on around him. He's always been very aware. But his temptation to cope with his reality is to ignore. So he went forward with it, and it gives him sort of a boner, sort of like a power boner, something like that. Yeah, that could be. One thing's for sure, he's not very convinced. He's forcing conviction into it, which is different. Chris, you fucking sneaky ass motherfucker. Any holy Bible, okay, and any uppercase, very high and then ending low. The horns, what are the horns? I've barely ever seen the horns there. I've barely ever seen people write that letter like that on the original photograph. Look at the P right there, all like swirly and pasted with a lot of ink and conflicted. And Chris, neck and shoulder, chest area. I'm gonna. This video is gonna be fucking eternal, so I'm gonna try to rush a little bit to see like just okay. Original photograph of my body's face. People who are experts at these things that know more about this should like dissect this. I mean, people are in prison right now, but I mean people like more out in the public. Neck and shoulder. Look at how, by the way, I was almost missing this part. Look at all of this paragraph. There is barely any separation. He's very invasive about this. He's trying to force you into believing this. It's very grabby, very invasive. There's no space. There's no fucking space between letters, basically any of them, except in very specific places, like in any Holy Bible, and then he separates that, like sort of trying to distance himself, because deep inside he knows it's wrong what he's doing. Beard, mustache, and again another aggression sign on the eye right there. Another repressed energy. That's what those things mean. Repressed energy, aggression, stuff like that. Frustration and sideburns. Now space there again. That photo next to any image, and then it starts writing very, very unstable. It's almost totally different handwriting now. Feels very conflicted. He doesn't really believe it. Deep inside, he doesn't believe it. He feels sort of guilty. Oh, look at that! Look at that D right there. Directly and genuinely. Not really, Chris. You don't mean that. With the cosmos, both he stuttered to write that. Look at the T in both. He fucking struggled to write that. Physical evidence. Again, same thing repeats all over and over again. Let's go. Let's see the other. Let's see if I can find it. Wow. Look at how much frustration. Look at how much frustration. Repressed energy. Damn, this part is even worse. Look at. Okay, notice this. Notice that in the first part, in the first two lines, he's not using a lot of force when he writes. He's very insecure. The other camera's infinite form he doesn't believe this. He doesn't fucking believe this. He knows he's lying. Look at how he kind of don't want to write it. I encourage you, and he's trying to emphasize that a lot. He's hopeful that you believe it. He writes it ascending to meditate deeply, and then he starts to feel more secure about the rest. He has more of a pulse when he writes the rest of the letter. Very invasive again. Repressed aggression, sadness, exhaustion, literally, and he emphasizes that the L and literally. What the reawakened? Look at that mess. Reawakened, and he like repressed energy right there. Gods and goddesses. Look at how it basically becomes cursive. He feels very sentimental when he writes gods and goddesses. Very feminine. Again, paste in huge right there. Life. Look at my past life. Look at how big he writes life in his. He means his own life, and he writes it very big, very noticeable, with a lot of repressed energy and aggression and anger. He feels his life is super, like he's huge. Personally, again, repression right there, frustration. Obviously, he has an artistic nature. He uses a drawing in handwriting. That indicates artistic personality. I do that too. Ooh. Okay, I missed a lot of details, but I want to finish this, and I want to point this. Look at how. Okay, I want to point this little detail. Judgment Day is nearing. Notice the period. So he's trying to tell you. He's emphasizing so much about Judgment Day is nearing. He's aggressively trying to make you notice that. Trying to make you believe that shit. Okay. So I wish I could stay more time with every page, but the video is getting to be way too long already, and the pattern sort of just repeats itself. It just becomes more and more distorted. The more he keeps writing, it starts to like sink a little bit more into like, ugh. He becomes more aggressive as he goes on, and look at how aggressively he corrected the had less than $50. He felt angry about that, feels frustration, and he corrected that shit. So basically, he just starts feeling more aggressive, more frustrated, and more rushed, and just Chris basically starts to derange the more you write. The last part side, he put that shit in there. Basically the same pattern again. I wish I could go more into detail and see what else I can, analyze from this. But the video is already too long. Let's see, pro gay. Look at how feminine. Look at how effeminate he wrote gay, and then he corrected there adultery. Look at he felt conflicted. He didn't feel good about writing that. Happy spirit, genuinely spiritually and happy, all uppercase, but very unstable. Look at this paragraph right there. Deeply happy, content, and spiritually satisfied. No, Chris, you don't really think that at all. You're not being honest. His handwriting is very shaky. He's like, not really. I don't feel that. As long as it's rushed and shaky and uneven, and content is all my parties involved, and he starts the more he starts to finish, the more the final part is weaker. He doesn't fucking believe. He doesn't feel secure of what he's writing in the final part. I have written further insights and details already saved there, and I get out in second coming or sooner by well, basically, he's not secure. Again, unrevivable, and no more unrevivable. And he again, look, is this a spiral? I think so. And the final E right here, it's a spiral, a lying spiral. And then the period is very aggressively emphasized right here. Judgment Day. The periods right here are very pronounced. He tries to make a lot of emphasis, like that's it, that's period, that's it. And then his signature, very cursive, artistic, very open person. No shit, this Chris. But I think I'm gonna end it there. I hope I'm happy with the video, how it comes out. I hope it's okay. I'm gonna look, just to finish. I just noticed something. He wrote as her goddess, and he put that super big period there. He means a lot of. He tries to emphasize that and make it very clear to others. Period, and it's very fucking like aggressively written. So bonded and talked again. The same period, emotionally, and the frustration right there, repressed energy. Okay, okay, I'm gonna finish now. Bye. Long ass video. Okay, bye.